Hello and welcome. This is Chat with Chet, edition 12. It's good to see you all again. It's been a lot recently, and so I took a break while I focused on what's happening in America and focused on race relations and learning about that. And I'm still continuing that process, but wanted to start this one back up again just to keep it going and to give people somewhat of a distraction if they need it for a bit before they hop back in. So today we're going to do something a little bit weird. Today is going to be all about testing one particular feature which was introduced in, I believe, 17.1 in disguise. And that feature is called proof of play. So proof of play is going to give us a CSV value of everything that was played from start to finish of the project being open. And the reason that this is useful is not depending on what medium you're working in. For instance, in theater, I can think of very little reasons I want to have this running. However, this is going to be massively important for something like an arena. So the history of this feature actually comes from Arena's request because they use disguise as their ice mapping or floor mapping for basketball playback solution. And they play commercials back throughout the course of the game, and they want to have a list saying these are what was played at what time for how long, so they can provide it back to the sponsors as proof of the fact that yes, we did play your video. So we're going to tinker with that today, and I did a very brief test with it when it was first released, noticed a little bit of weirdness, and then kind of put on the back burner because I had a bunch of other things going on, actually like diving into it. So what we're going to do today is start from the very beginning, test a variety of different attributes. So the first one that we're going to go into, let's actually pop over to my desktop here. And we've got a quick list of things I want to check. One video played halfway, played to completion, played to hold it in. So if you pause, what that does. If you loop, what happens when you get back to the loop points, which I have a feeling this one is not going to be very successful, but we'll find out. 2 videos, each played half, 2 videos played for their full length. 1 video, the second video, back to the start video, played at half their lengths. 1 video, the other video, the start video played it full. So we'll see what happens with repetition of videos as well. And the first thing we'll do is just open it up and see what we get in the CSV. So I'm going to go ahead and open up D3 Manager. You can see this is Chat with Chet 012. And the first thing what we're going to have to do is actually make this so that proof of play is turned on. So if we right click here on the folder, I can go to the advanced project settings. So I've introduced this a couple times. There's a lot that can be done in the advanced project settings. I'm a really big fan of it because this is where some really important pieces will be hidden. Some of them, allow persistent mute. I live with allow persistent mute on, because I will mute ideas that don't work when I'm working on a project or ideas that we're testing out. I want to leave all the keyframing, all the sequencing in place, but I just want them to not output. So I will mute things in shows almost constantly. Allow open editors while playing is very important if you're running a mixed master show. I'll sometimes turn off Alt-Tab and Windows shortcuts after I turn off a show, or turn over a show to the operator, so that they're not tripping up on that. 10-bit output, putting the GUI rectangle in the feed so that you can output that as well. Enable NDI, this is actually depreciated because this has been rolled into the actual software. Enable proof of play. This is the one we want. So I'm just going to click that box. I'm going to keep going down to show a couple others which are interesting. Is mouse unrestricted? I like, because that way when I'm working on my laptop, I can have D3 on an external monitor and be able to move my mouse onto my primary monitor and still have it all there. Max heads combines with that to make sure that I only have it on one head. Is quiet feed map is an interesting one for those of you who are working on site. Specifically, I've gotten this request from people doing XR style work or using LED walls for cameras. They want to be able to adjust feed maps and other projection or other geometric projection styles, but they don't want to see the bright red because people freak out when you throw red at 255 across the LED walls. So this prevents that from happening. It makes it a little bit harder to tell what's going on in the GUI, but it's a much safer way so that you don't hit that. And then you've got the application window, which I would actually set using machine settings, enable application mode if I'm going to use that. I'm not for this, and I'm going to be openly honest. This experiment may very well fail because of the strain on my computer running 2 monitors plus the stream at the same time. So let's go ahead and let's open up our project. It will just take a moment to load while I sip my tea. Take a long moment to load. Like I said, I think the performance decrease with streaming may be what really affects us on this. I just not double click properly. I may also just be really bad at clicking. Oh, there we go. It was just taking a moment. So, designer's loading, all the pieces there. Loading the Notch LC subsystems. Project load, initialization, go into the D3 console files, which if you're bored one day, it's a very interesting read. It's not a very interesting read. That is a complete falsehood. Control M, because I don't like that. Stage, we're going to go ahead and pull my projector out because we don't need it. Right like that. Cool. Oh, there we go. So I'm just going to throw a split in. We're going to make a new layer. We'll make it a video. For media, I put a couple test videos in. We've got the orbiting galaxy and the street test, which I'm sure any of you who have taken D3 training are familiar with because they're usually in the default assets. So I'll just go ahead and throw the test street there. Split again. New layer, test 2. Video, this. And we'll add another split. So, theoretically, I don't believe anything should be on that proof of play list yet because we just sequenced, not if it was actually playing. That's another thing that I thought about testing, but I'm hoping we don't have to worry about. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into my first video, let it run for a few seconds, hop into my second video, let it run for a few seconds, and hop out. Easy as that. So I'm going to go ahead and dump out of D3 now. And now if we open Chat with Chat, open project folder. So now I have an output folder, which gives me my proof of play. Open up Excel. Interesting, so it did play a little bit of one of the first sequence. But you can see how many frames were played, what the start time of that play was, the end time of it, And good, this is using my local time, so that's nice. Yep. So back when we were sequencing it, start time, end time, what layer it was in, and it tells me the project folder file path to where those files are. So that's interesting. That's good to know. The sequencing thing, I assume we will be fine without. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to pop back into D3 and we're going to sequence a couple things. I'm not going to save my changes because that's going to get overwritten every time we do this. And we're hopping back into the sequence itself. So if you notice, there were really random frame numbers that I skipped around to. One was at 94 frames played, one was at 170. I'm going to get more precise with that, and we will, after I build this, we'll code really quickly in QLab. I've got my laptop set up to be able to run some tests for me. So I'm going to make a new track, and that track is going to be my template track, which the template track is actually going to look a lot like everything else. Tag type Q, tag 1. So Q1 will be our first Q, and this will be Control L, video. We'll put that in, and we will call this container 1, just so that we have a different name to work with. We'll split here. I'm going to duplicate this to give me container 2. We'll drag container 2 over, swap it out for the street, split here, duplicate this for container 3, split here, and for tag this will be 4. Three, 2. So now we've got 4 Qs for all of this in our template. Q1 will play our first container. Q2 will play our second container. Q3 will play our third container. Q4 will take us out. So let me go ahead and throw up one more video layer. And we're going to use video in 1 because I was clever before this, and I set up NDI outputs on my laptop. So now if I pull in scan converter, there we go. You can see here is my actual QLab setup. And I'm going to change one thing here. If we right click on the video, under cropping, you can see it's clipped to canvas. I'm actually going to fit to canvas. Just that way we can see everything at the top. You can see my name, the fact that the clocks mostly match. But I'm going to use QLab. I noticed an interesting bug in this version of Scan Converter, and that's my cursor is currently at the top right of my screen, and it's at the very middle here. When I'm at the middle, it's there. So it's scaling up this smaller area to be the full range of my cursor. So that's a fun one. So you won't be able to see what I'm pointing out with my mouse there, but I can point here. So we need to do this using network queues. In QLab, a network queue allows us to send OSC. So before we do that, let's take a step back and let's set up OSC on both programs. If I right-click on devices, click the plus sign, I can add OSC1 to my show. So now this is an active device. Where am I going to send to? This doesn't technically matter, but I can put it in anyway. So if I open my network preferences, we can see here, I'm currently at 192.168.1.9, 192.168.1.9. Brilliant. And I'm sending the port 7400. Additionally, on my network info here, we've got 192.168.1.4 is what my laptop running D3 is on. So I'm going to come over here, open preferences on QLab, which is the gear in the bottom left corner, or command comma. And under network, we'll name patch 1 D3. Type is address, network automatic is fine, and we're going to send it to 192.168.1.4, 192.168.1.4, and 7401, because that's what my receive port is set in D3. So that's done. Great. All of that lines up. The next step is, if I right-click on transports, I'm going to make a new event transport. The type will be remote, and we will call this new event transport OSC because its type will be event transport OSC. The message we use OSC1, and we engage it. So now, theoretically, this should be set up. So I'm going to go ahead and we make a network queue in QLab. It's right here, the network tab. Under settings, destination, type OSC message. I'm just going to type in how I command, or how I control my timeline. /D3/show control /Q space 1. So now that that's set up, we can see I've got highlighted in blue queue number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just push spacebar, and hopefully, brilliant. Takes us to our first queue. There is one mistake on this that we're going to fix really fast. So I'm going to right-click on my transport, right-click on the remote transport, and under the input messages, queue play mode, I will set to be play to end of section. So every time we take a queue, it starts it playing. And we can see again, if I reselect that queue and fire, we play through. So I'm going to let this queue play all the way through the end. Each of these queues are 10 seconds. And we'll see what happens if it plays over time. So that's 2 full revolutions back to back, and I'm just going to go ahead and dump out of V3, right like that. Here's our proof of play. You can see it was modified right now, so hopefully it has the new information in it. Okay, and yes, it does have our programming. It gives us some interesting pieces, though. Oh, interesting. Huh. So you can see it maintains a running length of it. So that's fun. Cool. So we learned a couple things. First thing we learned, it's maintaining a running list of what we use. So I may try and delete this next time and see what we get. Second thing, when we tried to play our loop, note how it did not play all the way through. Stopped at 299. So that means that looping it is going to be problematic. However, when I go back in, I'm going to change these anyway because these should be hold at end of section because you don't want to loop them anyway. Great. So that's taken care of. That gives us an idea. Container 2, container 3, container 1. Play the video once. Interesting. Ah, yeah, so you can see it was named video when it got 1, 2, 3. Okay. Cool. But yeah, interesting lessons learned that time. So I'm going to not save my changes this. I'm going to delete the proof of play. When we start doing this for real, we'll just drag out all of our proofs of play and save them here on the desktop. So let's go ahead, let's pop back into Chat with Chet. The other fun thing about this feature is there's no documentation on it yet either. So some of the people might be wondering how all of it works. But yeah, we're going to give this a quick test. Great. So we are back loaded into Disguise. There we go. It finished loading that. Let's go ahead and under Appearances, I'm going to pull off Projector Surfaces label so we don't see that floating in the middle every time. We'll just come into here and change it from at endpoint loop to at endpoint pause. 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 And notice how I close these each time just to be safe. Cool. So let's program a quick QLab sequence that will let me test this by going to container 1, container 4. It's going to do a half play, so we'll just see how that works. So I'm going to name this as container 1. I'm going to copy it and paste it, and we'll make one that will go to Q4, and we will call this videos out. And I'm going to group these together. I selected them and then used Command 0 to make a group. This is the Fire, Child, and Enter into Group queue type. I need to change my templates in QLab. I did in an older version, and I forgot to carry that across here. But basically, we're going to make this auto-continue, wait 5 seconds, and then go to video out. Container 4, yes, Q4, Q1. So let's just remove these queue numbers if they don't do us any good. And for cleanliness sake, our number of queues is off. And under queue template for group mode, we can set to be timeline. Quick things that make my life nicer. We will have those not continue, and we will set this to be mode timeline. Great. So now we have it set. So it will fire Q1, and 5 seconds later it will fire Q2, or sorry, Q4. And let's run that. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go, and out. Just like we wanted. So I'm going to dump out Disguise again and see what that gave us. We'll open our project folder, output, proof of play. So we got our gobbledygook there. Note that frames play and total frames played for our video in 1, there's only 1 frame for that because it's a live video. 300 video frames for that. So we didn't quite get 5 seconds. I would expect us to have 150 frames, but this could partially be due to the fact that I'm doing all of this through networking and through a saturated network that is also streaming to YouTube at the same time. So I'm not as concerned about that right now, but I will test it again once I'm off with all of you and see how that works. So let's pop back into D3. And I'm going to run all of our tests. Am I? No, we should still come in and out every time. So that was the 5-second test. The next one we're going to test is the 10-second test. So to do that, all I'm going to do is copy this queue, first queue 10 seconds, queue out, and we'll just change the pre-wait time to be 10. So now, when I fire this and go, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and out. Right like that. Dump out the skies. I may have fouled this up. Yes, I had it open so the skies couldn't save over that proof of play. So we'll just grab this and we will rename it as play 1 5-sec out. Pop back into here. Fire up D3 again. Oh, you're really angry now. This, but between doing the external monitor, doing the streaming, and everything else going on, it's a lot for it to handle. I should really offload this to something else, but that's a bit more that I want to go through right now. So we'll just sit here for a second, let that fill up, great, and let's redo our second test and go. 1. I'm not going to keep counting, you can follow it if you really want to. I wonder if we're getting a lower number of frames because of dropped frames. Could be that. We are only playing back at 40 FPS. So if it's not delivering frames, it may not report that it delivered all of that. $50 times 0.66, since we're playing back at roughly 40 FPS, 99. So maybe, but we seem to be too high for that. So here's our proof of play this time. Yeah, and we dropped basically a second off that video. So I'll run through these again once I'm done. I just want to see how they're reporting. And we will rename this as play 1 10-sec out. I'm going to skip these for the time being, and we'll move on to our 2 video scenarios. So let's bounce back into D3. And give it just a moment so that we can see what the QLab programming is going to look like. And I'm going to change something really fast with these when we're making it. So I'm going to grab my first cue, which is the 5 second. I'll copy it. I'll paste at the end. First cue, 5 seconds. Second cue, 5 seconds out. We'll copy container 1. Make it container 2, and that will be Q2. So I'm going to change this slightly, and its mode is going to be fire first child and go to next queue. So we'll continue this down. We'll pre-wait this 5 seconds. Continue this down. That's pre-waited 5 seconds. So now what will happen is we'll fire the first queue, we'll hold 5 seconds, we'll fire the second queue, we'll hold 5 seconds, we'll take everything out. So let's watch that, shall we? And go. 1, 2, and out. Like that. Jump back out of disguise. Open the project folder, proof of play. Yeah, you can see we're dropping a pretty substantial. I think it's related to dropping frames. So I'll test this again without frames dropping and see if that sorts it. And while this is loading up, I'm going to make the change so you don't have to wait for me to do it. And that change is simply going to be 10 seconds to the wait on container 1 and 2. 12 seconds for both. To see what happens if we give a few more seconds if some of it's missing due to networking. So it comes back up. We should get our playback shortly. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and notice I've got 12 seconds on the holds now for 1 and 2. So we'll just go ahead and fire. And we'll patiently wait for this to complete. That's the full video. It holds for a second. Second video. And it takes us out. Perfect. Here's our proof of play for this go round. Yeah, so it's still not giving us completion. I think that's due to the dropped frames, but a little bit worrying. I need to test that when I am not doing this. So let's run just the last test. So I'm going to run the first video, play the second video, restart the first video again, and I'll play only half of them. So we'll start back up into this. Patiently wait for disguise to finish loading. You're taking a long time. Or I'm just not registering double clicking all the time for me. One of those days. There we go. So, so I'm grabbing my template for firing first and then second. We'll paste at the bottom. Fire first 5 seconds, second cue 5 seconds. Third cue 5 seconds out. So we'll just copy and paste container 2 into container 3. Now I programmed this so that we go to container 3, but we could also double back on 2 because it seems like it's registering okay between those. But we'll go ahead, that looks programmed fine, so double check, yes, Q3, 2, 1, and 4, and go. 1, 2, 2, 3, and out. Dump out of it, check our proof of play again. Cool. So you can see it's at least very consistent on what it's perceiving it at. Huh. It's very consistently that far off. Yeah, I'll go ahead and unplug this from my monitor so that I can run it without all the external pieces there and see if that's any better. But that gives us a good idea of what's happening. You can see I forgot to grab it from the previous time of playing container 1 and 2 almost all the way through. Great. Good lessons learned here. So, what did we learn, I guess, is a good question. We just did kind of a deep dive into what I would use when I'm starting to benchmark something. I want to make sure I can trust it, especially because none of this has been documented. So we've now seen what proof of play documents. It documents the start and the end time of everything. It also documents what layer or container it's playing back in and the actual video played. It will tell us the frames played and the total frames. However, it is affected by, I believe, dropped frames. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and quit out once we're done with this so that I can run that test. And we'll see where we go from there. I hope this is helpful to someone. I'm going to write up a short guide on how it works over the next few days and just publish it because there's no documented information on it, which is unfortunate, but it's also not a feature that a bunch of people have been asking about. So we'll get that information out, we'll start distributing it, we can start to see what that really means. Anyway, I hope all of you are having a great day. It's been a pleasure talking. Next week we'll do something similar, but we're going to look at a feature inside Disguise that doesn't require external control. We'll do a bit of a dive into the rename table, which some of you have probably used. If you've been around theater, you've probably run into it. A lot of people haven't. We'll just go over a brief introduction of how do we set this up, how does it work, what is the underlying pieces of what's going on. So thank you all for joining us this week on Chat with Chet. As always, it's been a pleasure. I'm Chet. Have a great day.